So now that we have had the big setup, I just want to show you again, this is a Huffington Post. What the Huffington Post says about the settlement says that deeply concerning. Ex-prosecutor calls ABC's Trump settlement far from normal. And then here's the ABC apology as written in the court filing, that what they must do here and what they are doing, $15 million to a charitable organization, Trump Library, etc. George Stephanopoulos also having to give somewhat of a correction. I'm not sure of an apology, but an acknowledgement that, you know, what they say he said was wrong. Okay, Monique Pressley, you now have the floor, having heard all of that and taking copious notes.
I did.
What say you?
I did. I haven't heard the legal analysis yet. You know, I heard a lot of people talking about things that they find problematic and things that they find chilling, and calling things despicable and atrocious and saying, where's reputational harm? But that's a far cry, Don. And maybe they did that part at some other point. But I think if you start from the top and just do what I feel bound to as former criminal defense attorney and now legal analyst, it's look at the facts, look at what was said, and decide whether what was said was accurate or not.
And Monique, just to say, you are no fan of Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah. Let's 100%. Let's go with not a fan.
Remind our audience of that. Yeah. Go on.
But. And that's, again, that's the obligation, right? As an analyst, you're calling balls and strikes. So when George Stephanopoulos said, and I'm just going to put Nancy Mace to the side because everything she said was useless. She's not a part of the lawsuit, nor was she a part of that interview. She did something that is, you know, in certain people's bag of tricks, turn into the victim themselves, make it all about them, have the narcissism on full display. What about me? What about me? You're trying to shame me. Nobody was even talking about her. So let's put her off to the side. George Stephanopoulos said, first question, that Donald Trump was liable for rape and for defaming the victim of that rape. That's not accurate. Second question, has been found liable for rape and for defamation for that rape. Not accurate. Third statement, women are chilled by being defamed by those who perpetrate rape. Maybe that's true, but that's not accurate as it relates to this particular civil defendant, the now soon to be president again. Fourth, you don't find it offensive that Donald Trump was found liable for rape. Not accurate. Then he says, you're defending a man who was found to have committed rape. Not accurate. So if ABC is looking at a lawsuit and they've got to say, every time that he said that Donald Trump was found liable for rape, he, in front of millions of people, misstated the facts, misstated the law, misstated the jury's finding, then they may have just decided on the basis of the sloppiness of it and then the later refusal to correct it that they needed to get rid of this case.
Mm-hmm. Let's put some of the comments up. Amanda Day says, you are defending ABC, huh?
I'm not defending ABC. It's not really about defending ABC. ABC made a corporate decision. Okay, and let's re-enter the facts. In this case, the jury found that Donald Trump defamed E. Jean Carroll, and the defamation was in relation to his actions, which they found was the forcible digital penetration of her vagina. That is what they found happened. And under the law in New York, when they found that, that means sexual abuse. There was a different law at that time for rape, and it required the penetration to be intercourse with a penis and a vagina. And that was not the allegation, nor was that their finding. Now, since that time, The governor has changed, expanded the law in New York such that digital penetration is considered rape. But that was not the finding at the time. And it was clear in the orders. It was clear in the jury's verdict. It was clear in what the judge said afterward. So pointing to a judge writing an article and explaining things and writing follow-up orders and explaining that it was rape as is used in everyday life is not dispositive of anything.
Yeah.
Yes, it was rape as we use the word in everyday life, because in everyday life, digital penetration is rape. You know what else? Digital penetration is rape in many states in the United States, but not all of them. So you got to kind of take the Trump out of it in order to figure out whether we want, as people in media, especially if you are a journalist with millions of people watching, do we want any defendant to be in the position where a host can decide to use everyday language and supplant it with a jury finding or not?
Okay.
That's the question.
Okay. All right. So let's see. Okay. So listen, folks, some folks may be confused in the chat because I'm watching and when I'm looking down on the screen, just so you guys know, I'm looking at the chats that's running across this, but I'm paying attention to Monique. So I'm not actually looking up in the camera. So forgive me for that, but I must do it because this show is about you. We like to get your feedback. Also, some people are confused about digital. We are, Monique and I remember before we had a digital age where it talked about what is out in the, what you put on the computer. We're talking about fingers. These are called digits. When we say digital, this is what we're talking about. When people, because some folks are confused. Fingers are called digits, guys. And so when we say digital penetration, you get it. Okay.
I apologize for that.
And we don't have to apologize, but I'm surprised that that's like some people who can't write cursive. Some people don't know what digits are. Or when we used to say,
forcible. And forcible can mean forcible by strength, or forcible can mean absent consent.
Absolutely correct.
And Don knows I probably have more experience than most with these types of cases.
Yes, you do. And also, Monique, when we have to remember when people used to say, because you're old enough, when Monique, when you and I went out and someone would say, "Can I have those digits?" What did that mean? They wanted your phone number. Give me those digits.
Not your fingers.
Right. Well, you'd have to write the phone number down, meaning digits. Digits meant numbers as well. So there are lots of different meanings for words. So just so you guys know, that is what we're talking about. Okay. So there are folks who still, and I want to ask you about this. So, so someone says, T Mama says, I was not aware that fingers are digits. Thank you for clearing that up. Wow. It's so interesting to me. Okay. So Monique, I understand the understand of all of that. And there are folks who are actually saying, I get it now. She is not making excuses or defending ABC. She's doing what a smart person with a legal mind, an attorney's mind, would know about this as a former criminal attorney, right? Is that correct? You weren't a prosecutor. You were a former criminal.
I was a criminal defense attorney, and then obviously a civil defense attorney in cases like these. So my knowledge is, well, listen, people who are watching who maybe don't know, I was former counsel for Bill Cosby and legal spokesperson during the time when he was accused of digital penetration, which is with a finger of a person in the state of Philadelphia, the state of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. And that was rape in that state. Mm-hmm. So, state to state, there is a difference. And people who are asking, so they're saying if it was rape in any state, then ABC is in the clear. That's also not correct. The host was saying found liable for rape, and that's just not true. And so I think it is important, whether it is a very famous billionaire, civil defendant or criminal defendant, or whether it is Joe on the street who's from a poor part of town and has a false accusation against him due to mistaken identity. It's necessary that we who are in the public use our words and they be as accurate as possible. And that doesn't mean that we're not going to make mistakes, but it means when we make mistakes, we have to quickly acknowledge and correct our words.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so listen, had George Stephanopoulos, in your opinion, said that he was found, says, listen, when he has been found guilty of sexual assault or whatever, or not guilty, or liable for sexual assault, which a judge says is akin to rape, would that have been accurate? Would he be in this trouble?
There would be no, he'd be quoting other people. There's no issue there at
Didn't
all.
he do that? He should have done that initially. You don't think that he did it soon enough? Because he did bring up the Washington Post report, the Guardian report, the Independent report, the other reports that said the same thing that he said. And he said, the judge clarified, blah, blah, blah. Even though he brought it up and corrected it later, that has no bearing on this case?
That wasn't a correction. The fact that the judge says what the jury found is rape as, and the quote was, as it is used in everyday life, that's not a legal standard. Mm-hmm. That's not what they found. They could have found rape and did not. They could have found, as the judge said in the order, forcible touching of breasts, and did not. They made very specific findings at the time, and they found that there was forcible penetration using a finger, which is in the law is called digital penetration, but that did not mean rape in New York at that time. So every time he said has been found liable for rape and has been found liable for defamation for that rape, he needed to say has been found liable for sexual abuse, has been found liable for defamation for that sexual abuse, because that's exactly what happened. And then if he wanted to say, and that sexual abuse is what we commonly call rape, is what is known as in common speak rape, or what is referred to in other states as rape, maybe it wouldn't have been as much of a problem. But I say, Don, I'm kind of like, why though? Sexual abuse is horrible. Sexual assault is wrong. The jury's finding was strong as it was, and these actions are hideous as they are. So when we colloquialize about things that have legal significance, that's where we get in trouble. And I don't think that we should do that.
August de Winter says the interview got away from him and he did not course correct it, is paying for it now. I understand as a journalist, you must be precise with your words, and sometimes you mean things and it doesn't come out right. But shouldn't journalists, journalistic organizations be given some sort of leeway to correct what they had to say? I felt that he tried to correct, course correct. I'm not sure, at least point the evidence. If they had come back and said on air, George got it wrong, or what George meant to say was this, we apologize for the error, would that have made a difference?
I think that if they had taken advantage of the opportunity given them by the plaintiff's lawyers to make an immediate correction, then we would be in a different posture. And I think that the correction, maybe George wouldn't have wanted to apologize because he's like, he's a rapist, he's a rapist, he's a rapist. And I'm like, you know, you can feel the way you feel, but feeling the way you feel about a particular defendant and their cumulative actions doesn't have anything to do with what was actually said. So I think that if they had taken advantage of that opportunity, corrected, because here's the thing, Don, it's not just on George and his words. Then they refused to correct the story. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they refused to correct their Chiron. I hope I'm saying that word right. Chiron, their lower third. And so,
which is the writing on the screen. But let me say this. True Tech, I think, brings up a very good point in the comments. Semantics. And again, and I say this as someone who is a survivor, okay? It's semantics. Unmarked grave victims didn't go to a better place because of semantics. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you get my sentiment here? And if it means that in every other, or just about every jurisdiction in the country except for New York, then where's the lie? Where's the lie?
The lie is when you said found liable for.
Okay.
I mean, it's really, it's
that
very
simple.
simple.
Okay.
It's not a question of the wrong being done. Like, this woman is a victim of rape by not just world standards now, but by New York standards, because the law has changed. But even in the fact that the governor had to change and expand the law, that should tell the whole story, because you don't have to go back and correct what is already accurate.
Okay.
And what is already inclusive. But the George Conway comment, I think, was important. You know, I have a great deal of respect for George for his commentary.
We put George's comment back up as Monique talks about it. Go ahead. Sorry, Monique.
He said that what ABC did doesn't make monetary sense. I perhaps agree. This settlement makes zero sense from a legal standpoint. It assumes there is a moral or reputational difference between forcibly penetrating a woman's vagina with fingers and doing so with a penis. Okay, the reason why he says it assumes that is because in a damages case, what the plaintiff is saying is, you called me a rapist and I'm a sexual abuser, basically. And you are injuring me with the label rape, because rape at that point meant using something other than a finger. You would have to use a penis for it to be so. It also assumes that Trump has a reputation that could suffer damage. Again, another good and accurate point. You and I were texting back and forth. Would the damages have been $15 million?
That was my question. If they had gone on, right? If they had, as we said, did they cave too soon? Because I think that the reputational damage that it has caused is far more than $15 million. But please, you have the floor.
I think that if they were not wrong, if there was a close call on the first element of establishing whether the statements that were made by the host were factually correct, if there was any wiggle room there, then it wouldn't have made sense to settle. And I don't call it caving. It wouldn't have made sense to end what was going to be a long and acrimonious and expensive legal battle. It would have made more sense to try if the first element, where I'm showing you the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times he said something that was just factually inaccurate. And then they would have had to figure out, sure, he said something wrong, but did he intend it? Because you have to prove malintent with a public figure, not just that it was wrong, but that the host knew that it was wrong, and that ABC knew it was wrong when they continued to print it, and that they did so with malintent to harm the plaintiff. Then they'd have to show that he had, as George said, a reputation that could be harmed. It's obvious it did not harm his reputation, right? Because he continued to go forward and ascend once again to the highest office in the land, even after this happened. So sure, they would have had arguments on damages, but they still would have maybe sometime next year been found liable. 15, 20, $25 million later on legal fees, they would have been found liable for defaming by that time would be sitting president of the United States. And so they have a responsibility to mitigate their own damages by not spending money unnecessarily and frivolously that, in my opinion, would have been spent no matter what. And to stand on what principle? Because at the beginning of the day, it was wrong.
Okay, so you think if they had gotten to a courtroom or gone to a jury would have sided with the former and president-elect or sitting president at the time, just over the words?
If they end up with a jury form, it's going to have, like, when you get these jury forms, it's going to ask you multiple questions, and it's going to sound kind of like what I just did. So on the first question is going to be a finding of fact, whether Donald Trump was found liable for rape and for defamation for rape, whether the statements by the host were accurate. They're going to check, no, he was not. So that's how they're going to have to answer that one. Then the second one is going to be, did the host have the right information? Was the host and was ABC aware of the accuracy of the finding? And I think that the plaintiffs are going to put into evidence that when this verdict came out, Last March, ABC and George Stephanopoulos repeatedly said that Donald Trump was found liable for sexual abuse. They weren't
Mhm.
saying rape. So at some
Mhm.
point, they knew the difference. They knew what to say. They knew what to print. So box 2, yes, they know the difference. 3, was there malintent? That's where everything starts going south. I don't know. This interview was very strident. So it's not going to do them any favors. And then them refusing to correct it afterward, that's not doing them any favors, because they had a time to like mitigate whatever damage there is to Donald Trump's reputation. And then finally, the jury's going to have to assess damages. And that's when it's like $3, I mean, no damages to be found, right? Because his reputation was not harmed by any of what happened. So they will have spent a whole bunch of money to not be fully exonerated. And that's what you want. You want to come out of it, as Tina Turner would say, just my name.
Okay, so a couple of things that I want to ask you. So if you were ABC or George Stephanopoulos' attorney, you would say settle. You would advise.
I'm going off of what I can see.
Right. You don't know what the other evidence is. You don't know what the evidence is. You're not in the case.
I don't know what was going to come out in the emails. I don't know if there were emails going.
That was my point. So you said intent. So there would be a discovery process, because Donald Trump was about to sit for discovery just before this headline came out. The news came out about them settling. The headline was, and it was just a few hours before, Donald Trump will sit for a deposition. But that would mean that George Stephanopoulos would also be part of discovery as well. And perhaps his communications would be brought up, and possibly, I don't know if they'd be made public, but they would be seen or made available to the defense or the prosecution.
And not just him, the executives and what they thought they should be doing about it, what the parent company was concerned about. And when you've got a party on the other side like DJT, it's more harmful for him to know than it is for the public to know.
Okay.
You don't know what kind of extortion and drama you're setting your company up for when he has I mean, he's been in whole cases where the government had to file motions with the court to prevent him from seeing the evidence for the sake of national security.
Okay. So let's put your one more thing. I thought it was a very good question, and we'll go on, because someone says, because of how New York, it's New York State, right, defines rape, correct? What if the situation involved, and you see the comment up on your screen, Monique, what if the situation involved 2 men in New York? You mentioned it was only RP if it is, or the R word, if it was peen in JJ. Would the semantics still be the same if we're talking about semantics and words?
Well, I mean, I don't. It is.
That's a good question, right?
It's not semantics, but what I want to say is that now the law encompasses same-sex forcible penetration, whether with an object, with a finger, or with a penis. And before, the law was quite narrow. So a man could be sexually abused, but it would not be rape. And so I believe that the law now is more progressive.
We are thrilled to have you as one of our watchers. So thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you hit the like button and the subscribe button as well. And that way you can be notified about all of our new content. There's plenty of it for you. We're live every day at 10 a.m. Eastern time. We drop more videos at 2 p.m. Eastern and at 5 p.m. And if you want even more Don Lemon Show content, we'd love for you to become a member of the Lemon Nation, of the Lemon community. Members receive access to special community posts, exclusive content, and live shows. So just head right over to our channel page or click the join button on this video. Again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.